everyone, and welcome back to another episode of RC Podcast. Today, I am joined by the awesome Meghan Cooke. So, Meghan, tell us a little bit about yourself. Hello again.
Hello, everyone. As Ryan said, my name is Meghan. I'm a university student. I go to UBC as well with Ryan. I met Ryan through working as a varsity promotion staff. I was in first year, Ryan was in second year, and we kind of just did that job together, and we got to know one another through that. In addition to doing varsity, I'm also a residence advisor on UBC campus. I'm also a chemical and biological engineering student. And I'm from Ontario, Canada.
Yeah, she's from a tiny little town called Sudbury.
Oh, good old Sudbury.
That is, yeah, I once visited there and didn't know she lived there and missed an opportunity to see an old friend, which is too bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
I will never forget that, Ryan. I will never forget that.
You keep holding that on me, and one of these days you'll let that go. But anyways, tell us a little bit more about what's been going on lately. I know with engineering, there's been a lot of changes with COVID-19. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of the other engineering students. I know my experience is a bit different than other departments because I think there's around 14 engineering departments, and I'm in the chemical and biological one. So the way that it's working for us is generally all under the same faculty, but the approach is different from different departments. So I just want to clarify that first. So right now, UBC, specifically the applied science faculty, is moving everything online. So everything like no labs, no workshops, no design classes are going to be in person. They're all going to be virtual or put virtually online or delayed. And specifically for me as a chemical and biological engineering student, most of the time, like I'm in the labs, I'm working with machinery that I might need to use in industry, or I'm learning how a certain process works in the lab. And that's like really key and important when you're going to work after school or even on co-op, because that's how you learn to use all those equipment and processes. So it's really interesting how they're decided to move everything online. Labs are normally 50 people, which I think is within the BC government rule. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't put those in person, but I guess it makes sense for the social distancing and making sure everyone's safe. But it's really going to impact the learning of a whole bunch of engineering students, term one at least, because everything's going to be online. You're not going to be able to get that hands-on experience.
Yeah, and I think another thing is like a lot of students are international students, and we don't know if they'll be able to even come here, right?
No, exactly. So it's really good that they have those options and that they are putting everything online. For the people who can't travel, who maybe have to take care of a family member and need to stay home or don't really feel comfortable traveling right now, because every country's at their own different peak or situation. So in that sense, it's really good to be online. But when you're thinking about the hands-on experience, that's something that's really lacking. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do to almost make up for that component. They haven't made, for my department anyways, they haven't made any final decisions on what's going on. They've kind of kept it up in the air of it might be virtual, we might delay it until term 2, but I'm really curious to see what they do for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think now is the time to be a computer engineer because it's just all coding. Those people probably have it the best out of everyone. Just like, they're already coding in their computer at home, so they're probably better off than most people. Not saying they're doing fine, but better off than most people.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, my boyfriend is a computer engineering student. And when we went online term 2 this past year, like everything just shut down in March. And the last project that they had to do was with Raspberry Pis. And that's a type of, I don't fully know it. It's a type of coding
Okay.
sequence, or it's like a circuitry board. Please don't take what I'm saying seriously. If you really want to know what it is, please look it up. I don't fully understand it, but they were going to work with Raspberry Pis, and each one is very expensive. So they were supposed to work on it in the labs in the classroom, because a big part of computer engineering is not just software and coding, but it's also hardware. So that entire design class, the last project where they were supposed to work with Raspberry Pis, it just got canceled, and the weight of that got moved to all the other projects, and then the course was done. So those second year computer engineering students really missed out on that opportunity to work with the
Mm-hmm.
Raspberry Pis and get that hardware hands-on experience. I do have to agree, they do get to do a lot of coding and more software at home,
Yeah.
but they're really missing out on that hardware component, which is what I guess really distinguishes computer engineering from computer science. But also
Yeah.
feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're definitely right. Like computer science and computer engineering, very different. Where computer science is just you're just coding. That's all it is. But one real question I have is why Raspberry Pi? Not why not Blueberry Pie, right? Why not pumpkin pie? Why Raspberry Pi? Megan, I'm asking you.
I wish I would know the answer to that, but I am simply just a chemical engineer. I am not a computer engineer, nor the creator of Raspberry Pis. So I really wish I could answer that.
Then I'll have to get Matt on this podcast another time and he can tell me why it's Raspberry Pis. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to keep yourself busy and how you're trying to kind of figure out what your degree is going to look like now that there's a lot of online schooling going on.
So for finding stuff to do and how to like navigate my degree, I'd say I'm kind of doing what everyone else has really been doing during this pandemic and quarantine. Finding things to do around the house, trying to pick up new hobbies, try something new, calling friends, trying to stay connected and socialize.
Mhm.
But I think as like an engineering student, I know like I was very fortunate to keep my co-op job. I was supposed to start in May, but it got delayed until June, which I'm still extremely grateful because I get to have that hands-on experience, get to learn a bit more of what I could be doing when I graduate. Um, but unfortunately, a lot of people lost their co-op jobs because of COVID-19. I like most of my friends who also had co-op jobs, they're now doing online school.
Me included.
So I think that's just one thing that I've been really grateful for during this time is that it didn't get delayed or canceled too much, unlike some other students. And I think it's going to be interesting how school is online because one I already mentioned before, all the technical classes are going to be virtual or be delayed.
Mhm.
But I think also just keeping yourself accountable and being able to motivate yourself to do the schoolwork at home. And that's almost tied into me working from home. So what they've done for my work schedule is I'm working in the office 2 days a week and working home 3 days a week. When I'm home, I need to be working during a certain times and certain hours. I can't be doing anything else. So it's almost really good for me to be practicing working from home because then when classes go online, oh wow, I'm in school. I'm not doing
Yeah.
anything else. So I guess it's good practice if you want to say that. But that's kind of what I've been doing to still continue doing my degree during all of this. But I know it's not the same for other engineering students, and that's for me, and I'm still really grateful for that.
Yeah. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about your co-op, about your so very interesting position?
Um, so I'm working for UBC Building Operations, and I'm helping with the waste management collection system or all that kind of stuff. So my job is specifically to come up with a better way to collect organic waste on campus. So all the green bins that everyone sees outside those buildings is finding a better way of getting that from the buildings to the compost site. Now, I'm not going to go into details of what UBC's current operations are or any of that because I don't know how
Mm.
confidential that is, and I just want to be careful about that. But basically, my role is to figure out, okay, what are the major concerns or problems with the current collection process? Two, okay, what do I need to do to improve these? Three, what are the potential options to consider and to go through? Four, kind of go through like a stakeholder analysis, start talking to other people, seeing what's feasible, do a cost analysis, just a whole bunch of analysis to see
Mhm.
which option would be the best one to go with. And then at the end of my summer term, I propose my personal opinion and show all my research that I've done over the 3 months, and say, hey, I think this is what you should go with, and then we'll see what happens from there. So that's mostly my role. For those who are engineers, it sounds like a lot of AppSci 100 and 101. That's basically what it is, which is really cool because when I was taking those classes, I like did not try in those classes whatsoever. I thought they were a joke. It was like the meme of first year. Those were like the meme classes. But now to actually be doing the design process and going through all of those steps, it's like, oh wow, this is actually really helpful. And it's been really cool to look at that another way and not, oh, this is just classes. Like, no, this is actually like real life and applicable. And this is why they're showing and teaching it to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so awesome that you are still getting this work experience even during these times. Like something I've been thinking about is just how competitive the job market's going to get for students trying to get all these work experiences. I mean, one thing that's kind of has to, that kind of is bringing on this competitiveness is the fact that so many of the jobs people are looking at, the experiences are out of the city or out of province or even out of the country. Like, for example, for people in my degree, physics, there are so many jobs that we had options to go after that are just not around. There are so many jobs over in Germany, over in Singapore and Japan that we can't go to now because they're all international and borders are closed. There are a lot of jobs over down in the States that we had options for that are no longer there. So now with physics, it's like you either have to apply to one of the few organizations and companies in Vancouver, or you get lucky and get a prof that you can work with. I mean, how is that, do you think, for the faculty of engineering? Do you think that's going to be a big effect?
Oh, definitely. I think that this is heavily affecting the job market.
Hmm.
I called my co-op coordinator, I'd say like a month ago, maybe, because I'm unsure about how online classes are going to be. And I'm sure a lot of other students are concerned. So I wanted to keep my options open. I wasn't supposed to apply for another co-op job until next September, but I thought, hey, why not like start taking a look and see what happens? Maybe I can get some experience now during the pandemic. And he was saying that normally a lot of jobs come out in June for
Hmm.
engineering. Now that might seem early, but jobs for the summer in engineering come out in January. For the like, it's kind of crazy how early they come out. So he was saying, oh, they normally come out in June. Normally there's a lot, but he started to explain to me that there aren't a lot of jobs that normally are there. There's usually a lot of research companies in like lower mainland and in the Vancouver area that are hiring students to help with their research, but research is considered non-essential. Their funding is being cut back or they don't have as much as they normally
Yeah.
do, so they're not able to offer those student positions that they normally offer. Um, that's specifically with chemical engineering because those are the only jobs I really have access to see. And same thing with oil and gas companies. Like we've seen how low the dollar has gone for gas or
Yeah.
across the country. So that's heavily impacted those companies and their ability to hire co-op students. So my coordinator was saying that as much as he would want to support me or support other students to look at those options, he's really worried about those students who were supposed to find jobs in September that there isn't even enough for them to apply to. And he apparently in engineering you have a capstone project in your fourth
Hmm.
year, and that basically is your fourth year. A lot of fourth years don't want to do their capstone online, so they're considering just doing an extra year of co-op so they can just graduate and do their capstone projects in person. So it's the pandemic's heavily impacted the jobs that are available for engineering students, and those that are available are extremely competitive, more competitive than they used to be. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, as a co-op student, those jobs are always really competitive.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's always like um, 20 people or so in physics applying for the same position. That's just from UBC, while there's other universities who also have options to apply for those positions. And I've seen it even more in the sense for engineering, where I see engineering jobs for stuff like SpaceX or Tesla, and there's people like 100 applications from UBC alone, and like it's for one position, which is nuts. And it's just crazy that those numbers are going to go up even higher. Like a lot of people, when they're thinking about how COVID's been affecting the post-secondary system, they all think about it's just online school, but it's a little bit more than that. The job market is extremely important, especially if you're in STEM, right? Like those experiences are really needed if you want to get a job right after university, or if you want to put something on your resume for grad school. So that's been really interesting seeing how that's kind of been affecting everyone, how it's been kind of adding a little bit of extra stress onto everyone's shoulders as well. And my co-op advisor as well has been trying to help us out in sciences. He's been trying to talk to profs to see if they'll take on co-op students even for midsummer and hopefully into the fall. So it's been really awesome seeing how my co-op advisor personally has been trying to help us out as much as he can. But yeah, it's hard times really for everyone. Like COVID-19 has been affecting everyone, students to business owners to people just trying to get by. And it's just crazy to see how life's really changed because of it.
No, I 100% agree with that. There's no way any of us would have been able to predict that in our lifetime we
Yeah.
would be a part of this like his this historic moment. Life, I want to say life changing, even though
Mhm.
it's not an amazing thing to be changing, but it
Yeah.
definitely will impact the way our society runs and how everything's gonna work after this is all done or this is passed.
Yeah, for sure. And I honestly think you and I are some of the luckier ones because we're in the middle of our university degree, right?
Mhm.
Where it still has a huge effect on us, but it's not as bad as say if you were a first year coming into university or if you're just about to graduate. A lot of people, like you said, you're like a lot of people who are trying to graduate now their capstones are kind of jeopardized in a sense, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I know a lot of people who graduated this year from my program, and I was talking to them, and they said, we didn't know when our last day of school was going to be. They went to Chibi has around 120 people, but some engineering programs have even less than that.
Yeah.
And they were saying, I didn't know that that day in March was going to be my last day of university. I didn't get to say goodbye to any of the people I went to school with for 4 or 5 years, which kind of hit me as like all these people I'm going to classes and
Uh,
schools with. Wow, like that's a major thing because that's where you develop a lot of your friends. That's how you develop like your study habits is your
mhm,
friends that you have classes with. So that really hit me there. And then of course, I'm sure you also know some other people who were graduating this year outside of engineering or in science or
mhm,
whatever department, and they don't get to walk across that stage with thousands of people applauding and congratulating them. They're just as accomplished as everyone else and they should be just as proud as anyone
mhm.
else. But having that moment taken away can be really, really hard as I can imagine.
Yeah.
But like you said, we're really lucky to be in the middle of our degrees and not too heavily impacted by this.
Yeah, and they don't get to shake Santa Ono's hand.
I know that's like the most disappointing part, obviously. Not getting the diploma, shaking Santona's hand.
Sad. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping because I'm going into fourth year right now, and I'm not going to graduate in 4 years. I'm going to graduate at the end of my fifth year. But I have
Mhm.
a lot of friends who are graduating at the end of this year. And right now, I'm just kind of hoping that possibly a vaccine comes out in time that they can be able to walk across the stage and I can go and celebrate. I can go bring them flowers and take photos with them at the Rose Garden, but that I can just be there and celebrate the fact that they're done university or part of their university experience, depending if they want to go into further post secondary. But yeah, who really knows how long this thing is going to go on for and how much longer it might just affect students.
I remember saying to myself, because a lot of people have been celebrating their birthdays in quarantine. My
Hmm.
sister's birthday was at the beginning of April, and she celebrated hers just with my family and her boyfriend. But I remember saying to myself, my birthday's in January, and I was like, oh, it'll be gone by then. But now, like reflecting on saying that, I'm like,
Hmm.
oh my God, did I just jinx that? Am I
Yeah.
gonna have a quarantine like 21st birthday?
Yeah, I mean,
So it's just surreal.
I'm November, and I was also thinking, I'll be fine. I'll get my birthday, and then who knows? I mean, the thing is, like, what's nice about BC right now, and hopefully we can keep this trend going if we keep cases low, is that BC started reopening, and their bars are reopening, and other places and restaurants are. So hopefully, if we can keep our virus counts down, we can keep this reopening trend going on and maybe we can celebrate our birthdays with a few friends at a table with a beer in our hands. But yeah, hopefully we can do something like that at least.
No, of course, I agree. I'm sure as long as everyone keeps social distancing and doing the best that they can to practice that and keep themselves healthy and safe, that's all that we can ask for.
Yeah, exactly. So now going into a little bit of a different topic in the Faculty of Engineering, we're going to talk a little bit about what this is a very popular topic amongst a lot of people, but a little bit about just the kind of demographics, right, of engineering. As we've talked, the faculty is trying to right now get the admittance rate to 50-50 for both male and females in
Yeah.
the faculty. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences there and what you've seen?
So yeah, as you were saying, the faculty's been trying to get 50-50 male female
Mm-hmm.
ratios. That was their goal for 2020. Unfortunately, they didn't reach that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still going to try and work and figure out what other ways that they can do for STEM outreach that's equivalent, and then how they can do like their admittance and all of that. As a female in engineering, I can say I know what it's like to be a female in engineering, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I personally have had a decent experience. The only thing that I remember sticking out to me as a stereotypical like comment was I literally had just arrived to UBC for the first time, and it was a day before I was moving into my first year dorm.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on a campus tour because I was like, what other way to see campus before this becomes like my new home?
Yeah.
And as I was on the tour, another male student who was also going into first year and moving into dorms the next day, he was also in engineering. And I don't think he heard me introduce myself or what program
Mm-hmm.
I was in, but I remember hearing him. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I like start talking to him, start like making some friends and all of that? And I asked him like, oh, what program are you going to? Already knowing that, trying to make conversation. And he's like, oh, I'm going into first year engineering. I was like, oh, so am I.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you wanting to specialize in? And he looks at me in front of the tour guide as well. And the tour guide
Yeah.
just is sitting in between this awkward conversation. I was like, oh, you don't look like someone who would be going into engineering. And I was like, oh, like,
Uh,
and which was like really
mm-hmm.
disheartening because that was like the first
Yeah.
engineering related conversation I had on campus. I didn't make too big of a deal of it. I made a joke like, oh, yeah, I'm a woman. It's stereotypical, not engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he kind of laughed and the tour guide kind of laughed, but it was a really awkward interaction. Later on, he ended up being in my chem lab and he had no idea what he was doing. And he ended up asking me all the questions, which made
Yeah.
me feel slightly better because I was like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the first things. Other than that, like, yeah, there's more guys in my classes than girls.
Mm-hmm.
In Chibi, which is chemical and biological engineering, they the female ratio is a lot higher. I think there actually might be more girls than guys in chemical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So in my department, I don't necessarily feel as segregated. But in first year, like, you'd have hundreds and hundreds of people in the class, and you'd turn around and you'd only see a handful of females. But that never necessarily intimidated
Mm-hmm.
me,
Yeah.
even though the numbers were so drastic. I grew up as like a tomboy, and that like in elementary school, girls were too like girly for me, so I always hung
Mm-hmm.
out with guys, so I always felt comfortable in those environments. Um, but yeah, I think that was kind of my impression of that. The only thing I didn't like that the faculty did is in our first year, one of our first year classes, AppSci
Mm-hmm.
101, that was something they talked about, was the gender inequality, because it's a fact there are more
Yeah.
guys than girls in engineering at UBC. But what they did is they paired a guy and a girl together in the entire room. And then all the guys that were left over made like pairs and whatnot. And we had to talk about the discrimination against women
Mm-hmm.
in engineering. To me, that felt a little off. I could see what they're trying to do and how that's
Yeah.
really positive, trying to talk about the discrimination and being open about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like being told that I'm being discriminated against.
Yeah.
That was like the only thing that felt a little weird to me, especially having to talk to another. Like, it's one thing for us to be talking right now about the discrimination,
Yeah.
but it's a little different to force two people to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because also people like everyone from all around the world comes to UBC, and people might come from different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, different culture upbringing,
Yeah.
um, which can heavily impact their views on all this kind of stuff. Because it's normal in the Western
Mm-hmm.
world for us to be talking about this, but in
Yeah.
other places there are no women engineers, and it's different. And I want to say weird, is that's the right word, weird to see other females in engineering.
Hmm.
So it just, that felt a little put off,
Yeah.
forcing the discussion and telling us we were discriminated against. But nevertheless, it is still good to talk and bring up.
Yeah. You almost wonder if that's the best way to go about it. Like, do you want people discussing it, especially if they're not educated on it, or do you want to try and focus more on the education process more, and then hopefully discussion happens after that? And like you said, there are people who come from different backgrounds, different countries where that's just not a thing, right? And to maybe put them in an environment where they're not used to, maybe that's something else where you want to just think, well, let's really focus on just educating them so that they know kind of what's going on as well. Because they're from different countries, they have different systems there. They also have different things that they usually talk about there. So maybe this is a conversation they've never heard of and don't really feel comfortable talking about, especially if it's with someone they might not know who might go right into judging them right away.
No, I completely agree with that. And I remember in that class, that was like one of our final exam questions, was because they did this psychological
Hmm.
study, and they presented it to us. And then on the final, I can't remember the question exactly, but it was something along the lines of, "Oh, let's talk about what was like a key takeaway about the discrimination of females, or the lack of females in engineering." And I remember reading that question. I'm like, you're actually like having us to memorize this?
Hmm.
Like, it just felt really weird to have that as an exam question.
Oh, that
So
was an exam
that
question.
was an exam question, my
Okay.
final exam in that class. It was asking, like, I can't remember it exactly, but it was asking about how there's not as many females in engineering
Hmm.
as males, and it went something along those lines. And I remember reading that and like, seriously, you're having us memorize this? This should just be something that we're open to discuss and talk about, not something you ingrain in our brains.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that's probably opened up a lot of people's eyes about what's been going on, I guess, with engineering was the Iron Ring ceremony that happened. And I remember reading some articles about the Iron Ring ceremony, which is this big ceremony you guys get
Hmm.
at the end. Oh, voice crack. You guys get at the end when you graduate, right? And I mean, you can probably talk a little more about the Iron Ring ceremony if you'd like, and I can hop in because you're probably more educated on the ceremony itself. And I just read an article on it.
Yeah, no, it's all good. This is actually something they also teach us in first year, is
Hmm.
what an iron ring is, what the background of it is, and what it symbolizes. So the reason why, so all engineers in Canada, I'm not sure about the US, but in Canada, when you graduate, you get an iron ring that you put on your pinky finger of your dominant hand. And it
Hmm.
comes from the accident that happened in a with a bridge in Quebec in the early 1900s. Some engineers were building this bridge to connect two cities across a river, and it kept breaking and it killed a few people. I don't think it was in the hundreds, but it killed some people because it wasn't structurally sound and the engineers didn't do a good job of building it. So they started to create these iron rings for engineers to graduate with, so that on your dominant hand specifically, so everything you touched had meaning and was going to impact people's lives. Because one thing that really distinguishes engineers from scientists or technologists is the fact that they're designing this and trying to help improve society with technologies. So everything you touch, everything you write, you're impacting someone's life.
Are you saying we don't do that in sciences?
No,
How
no, no.
dare you?
We take what you, they actually talked about that as well.
Yeah,
They distinguished the difference between engineers and scientists. And the way I like to take it is, we take what you guys do and we figure a way to use it and to implement it into
yeah.
society. So that's what that iron ring represents, is that you have that impact on society and people's lives by the work that you do. So going from there, the iron ring ceremony is really symbolic, and every engineer that graduates gets that. So you have the iron ring ceremony. The iron ring ceremony is governed or watched over by the Corporation of the Seven Wardens. They have they represent all of Canada, and they have different subgroups that go to different ceremonies or graduations, and they present the rings. Specifically in BC, they had Camp 5. They had like a whole bunch of people in that regard who came and presented the rings. And over the years, they started to notice that they had really misogynistic, sexist, or even just derogatory comments in general. I pulled up before this, because I knew we were going to
Hmm.
be talking about this, some of the key comments or the highlights of every year of the comments that they've made. In
Yeah.
2016, women, you should have caught up by now. 2017, the government should ban political correctness. These were comments that were made at the ceremonies.
Hmm.
2018, Indigenous people, they have been given enough. 2019, art students will only work at McDonald's. 2020, women love shiny things. And I remember hearing this from someone because they told me what happened at the ceremony. I also
Hmm.
read an article a bit more about this as well. And they were talking about the rings and how, oh, women just like shiny things, like implying like wedding engagement rings. And those were the kinds of
Yeah.
comments they were making. Yeah, they're not the biggest deal, like in
Yeah.
my opinion. They're
No,
like
yeah.
small little hints. But when you look at that list of all those comments together, that's not really necessarily the best
Yeah.
thing or really good. So a lot of people in the engineering undergraduate society worked really hard to talk to the corporation of the
Yeah.
seven ward and saying, hey, this doesn't represent our ideals. This doesn't really represent who we are as a society or a people. And this is a really meaningful moment that should be celebrated for everyone. And I know other schools, because I don't think it's just UBC that goes to the Iron Ring ceremony in Vancouver. I think also university students from other colleges and universities in the area also go to it. So a whole bunch of people were sending like open letters to the seven wardens saying, hey,
Hmm.
something needs to be done. So finally, this year, they weren't going to have Camp 5 speak at the ceremony. The director was going to speak, but unfortunately, that was canceled because of the coronavirus, which
Hmm.
goes back to the whole graduation thing. None of the engineers this year got a proper iron ring ceremony, and they had worked so hard to work like
Yeah.
cooperatively with the seven wardens and Camp 5, trying to find the best way to go about this to not have those misogynistic or those
Yeah.
derogatory comments at the ceremony, and still being able to preserve the history of the Iron Ring.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was a lot of information, so feel free to.
I mean, I read up on a lot of that from the UBC article on it, especially like some of the comments I read on the article that they said, and I was just like you said, it's nothing to get like really outraged about in the sense like call for mass change, but it's something where you look at it, you're just like, that's not decent. Like those are just like they're hurtful words that are putting people down, making generalizations. And it's like, yeah, you kind of it's either you change it or you can't speak. And I think they did an awesome job working with the seven wardens, like you said, to make sure Camp 5 doesn't have that kind of platform to say those kinds of things because they've had all these years to kind of change it, and if no changes happen, then that's on them. And yeah, those comments are just like they're uncomfortable really to listen to, and I can't imagine like people in those groups having to listen to them in big crowds where they're just being spoken like that. And that's just like, yeah, that's really rough that that's still kind of a little bit ingrained in some of these systems.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to all the comments that I was making before of like my experience as a student of being a female in the room being told I was
Hmm.
discriminated against. That put like a lot of focus on me and the other women in the room saying, okay, why are you bringing all this weird attention to us?
Hmm.
Almost with the weird, awkward comment I got from the UBC campus tour. That was a little awkward. That was said in front of my sister, who also wanted to go into engineering, and in front of the campus tour guy.
Hmm.
And it's just the smallest things that make you feel like you're being centered out and it's not necessary. And hey, I just want to get my engineering degree and like move on with
Yeah.
my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's always the smallest things. The other day, I had to go buy steel toe boots so that when I was walking on site, my toes wouldn't be crushed. If you went to the steel toe boot section, there's like 50 options for guys and
Hmm.
there's 10 options for girls. I have size 10 feet for women. That's size 8 men. There's not a lot of shoes that are that big, so I didn't have a lot of options to pick from, and my safety is the number one priority.
Hmm.
So just like the smallest things, I'm good to like like put next to me, like, oh, it's
Yeah.
fine. I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to keep getting my engineering degree. But like all of those comments that the wardens have made over the past couple of years, they kind of build up and they start
Yeah.
to really show the bigger picture of the message that they're trying to send and the way that I don't want to say the industry because there's a lot of different industries, but almost how
Yeah.
the engineering culture is,
Hmm.
or where it was.
Yeah. And I think that's also, that's going to be something that's really kind of fascinating to kind of watch and see how it continues to change over the years and whether they do get to 50-50. I'm always like, personally for me, I'm always skeptical of when people set ideals for what popular number or what percentage of population they want in this faculty and department. I mean, I think like the biggest goal right now in society is to make it so that everyone can feel comfortable enough to go after whatever passion they have, no matter sex, no matter gender orientation, race. But I don't know if that'll always have equal um, equal representation, sadly. But I think that's just the kind of the goal. Really, I think the society should be setting is no matter how you're born, no matter what you look like, who you are, if you can feel comfortable going after this passion. I think that's kind of how I see things. Yeah.
And I 100% agree with that. My thing with the whole 50-50,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. That would
Yeah.
be huge. I think
Hmm.
UBC has the biggest population of female engineers of any
Hmm.
university in Canada, or I don't want to say that exactly, but they have one of the larger percentages. But by doing the 50-50, like you said, it should be equal opportunity. I don't want, if it was between me and a guy, and the
Yeah.
guy clearly had better marks or way more experience in engineering, I
Hmm.
don't want them picking me over him just because of my gender. To
Yeah.
me, that would seem extremely unfair to the person that was up against me, who has worked just probably as hard or even more to get where he is.
Hmm.
And that also brings up the other thing, like you were saying, you want everyone to have equal opportunity to do what they're passionate for. Don't force people to be
Yeah.
passionate about STEM who aren't. Like,
Yeah.
I'm extremely passionate for that, and that's something I'm really interested in. But you don't have to go around trying to push and force this on female students to try
Mhm.
and get the numbers to 50-50. That almost
Yeah.
seems a little unfair. And like you were saying, everyone should be able to have the choice to do what they'd like.
Yeah. And in the end, it's always the people who are the most passionate who get the most done, who are the most productive, who change the most in their fields. Right. So we want the people who are the most passionate and not people who are there because they were told to change something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're at a really cool point in society where we're actually going to be seeing a lot of these changes, and I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how they change, which I'm looking forward to. But we've been talking a lot about engineering and whatnot. Why don't we talk a little bit more about something else you do on campus that we both did, which is working with varsity, working on the promotional team. I mean, I for one, hands down, one of the most fun I've ever had in a job, where we just get to goof around, throw t-shirts, help hype up crowds for games, and just have a really good time. And that's something I really enjoyed. But you are like, as much as I enjoyed that, you were doing way more than me. You were always on top of everything. You always knew the schedule, what was going on. You always had everything planned, and yet you still were able to have so much fun out there. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experience?
Well, thank you for that. I do really appreciate all those compliments. But Ryan, if you enjoyed it so much, why'd you leave? That's like my biggest question. I'm sure
Oh
everyone
yeah,
listening has that question.
yeah.
Like, you got a UBC crushes because of your dance moves. Like, why did you leave?
Well, I couldn't compete with Oscar, who was getting more UBC crushes. So
That's true. That's true. You can't beat
yeah,
Oscar in that
no.
one.
No, the reason I left was, I had two other jobs, which was Science World and RA. RA was a new opportunity that I was really looking forward to. And like I said, how varsity was one of the most fun I've ever had in a job. Science World just beat that, and I never had as much fun in Science World, mainly because I love working with little kids, and I love how they all praise me when I'm doing a center stage show. So I'd love to join varsity
It's
if I
all
had the
for the
time.
attention.
It
So
is
that's what you're
all for
telling
the
me.
attention. And who wants 18, 19-year-old attention when you can get 6-year-old kids straight up praising you? Yeah, I got a UBC crush, but I have kids coming up who want pictures with me. So
No, can't beat that. I can't. I worked at a kids camp for 2 weeks, and all the kids leaving were like, oh, I'm gonna miss you. You were my best friend. And it's just like, oh, you poor little
Right?
things. You're never gonna see me again. But yeah, no, it's totally fair. I completely understand it. But yeah, so that job is one of the most fun jobs I've probably ever had. For those who don't know, promotion staff work at varsity home games. So if you've ever been to homecoming or winter classic, we're the people running around the entire stadium or arena trying to organize activities for fans. If you're listening to this podcast, that might be why you recognize my voice. Um, other than Oscar, I'm the other person that goes on the microphone, but obviously can't be Oscar's dance moves. So you maybe don't hear as much of me as you do of him on the social media account. Um, so the role that we do as promotion staff is cheers, like, who are we? UBC, and all that kind of fun stuff. We do t-shirt tosses, and we do prize and events. So sometimes we'll be wandering around the crowd saying, hey, do you want to do a half court shot to win like a free snowboard and all that kind of stuff. We'll organize those fun events. We'll have a promo corner with activities and games that you can play outside of either the gymnasium, or we'll have it down on the turf field for soccer and football games like cornhole or beanbag toss, if people call it that. And all of those kind of fun stuff, and poster making. So that's definitely one of the most fun and intense jobs I've probably ever had. So especially when it's like the big game. So homecoming, you're running around everywhere because there's so many things going on. You got to get the flags to the players to run onto the field with, and you got to get them back. You have to do this game. You have to do this advertisement. And there's a massive script to follow. I think I microphoned every single football game except for homecoming because they had Nico, who graduated last year, come in because he does it professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And that the football games were probably the most stressful games I've mic'd because there's just so much going on during those games. If you were at Winter Classic this year, I also did Winter Classic, and I had a guy with a camera following me. Like, I was on the jumbo board doing games and trivia with everyone in the audience. And then I was also on the ice announcing the little kids skating around, doing all the games and all of that. So it's super intense, but it's also so rewarding and fun. I think the reason why I did that is I love sports. Absolutely love them. I was the nerd who did sports and did like every single sport in high school. So I always loved like watching football and hockey with my dad. So that was something that I was really passionate about. And the fact that I get to interact with fans, I get to hype them up and get them excited for what's going on, and I get to interact with them. That just motivates me and gives me so much energy during the day. Yeah, it's stressful. Yeah, I'm running around. Yeah, I'm pretty exhausted at the end of a shift, but it's the most rewarding job
Yeah.
that I've had in a while, and it's so fun. And I absolutely love working for varsity at UBC. It's so
Yeah,
fun.
for sure. I mean, I remember because varsity promotional team help hype up the pep rally for all the first years. And I remember when I was in first year, seeing those guys on stage, I'm like, wow, they're having so much fun. That looks just like a blast, throwing t-shirts on the crowd and hyping everyone up. And I never thought in 2 years that would be me on the stage, throwing out those t-shirts, doing some fun line dancing moves over here with Megan, and it's just a blast. And it's really cool how through university you can find all these little different unique jobs that really fit your personality. Like for me, I'm so extroverted, and like I said, I love attention. Give me more attention, people. But like, so jobs like that are just great, where I get to be out in front of everyone and not being afraid to embarrass myself, to even just to like hype people up, to make people smile and laugh, just being able to do cringy dance moves and seeing people get excited when you throw a t-shirt at them. Like, it's just some of the most fun I've ever had. And I mean, if anyone's listening to this and has always wanted a job like that, all you have to do is kind of look online and see when they're hiring.
Yeah. This year I know they've had difficulties because, as everyone could see,
Yeah.
everything's online for term one. So I think Canada West and University Sports Canada officially announced that term one sports have been canceled. So right now they're not currently hiring as far as I'm concerned, but definitely they always put that kind of stuff on their social media. Definitely keep checking that out. but yeah, I think I'm in like the same boat. Like I was there on Imagine Day and Jumpstart, and I knew the people on the stage because my manager actually asked if I could work it, and I said, "Hey, I'm in first year. I kind of want to attend it." And then the next year, I'm sure you feel this as well, Ryan.
Hmm.
Like I was a residence advisor, and all my residents knew that I was
Yeah.
going to be on that stage, like screaming my voice box out, or like whatever the saying is, and throwing those t-shirts and hanging out with Thunder and having all that kind of fun. And my sister was in the crowd as well because she was coming into first year.
Hmm.
And the first thing she said to me when I was done was, wow, everyone like around me was like, oh my god, she can throw so far. And that was like the one comment kept getting. And I know all my residents were extremely excited
Hmm.
after the pep rally, like, oh my God, that was my RA up on the stage. And it was so like uplifting. And at first, like, I'm sure like we were in front of every single first year at UBC on that
Hmm.
stage,
Yeah.
which was terrifying because you would be like a part of their memories.
I
But
wasn't terrified. I was loving it.
but like you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But it was so fun and we just had a blast. We were so silly and we didn't care on the stage. That's the other thing. I can do dumb stuff to make
Mhm.
people laugh in the stands and they'll just go along with it. It'll be classic. If you've been to a volleyball game at UBC, you'll probably see me and a whole bunch of the other varsity staff standing behind the net with our arms out as far as we can, shaking our hands, pretending to be like birds when the other team is serving to the UBC side team where we were standing because we were trying to distract them. Once it was actually quite funny. The other team complained that they were doing it, and the UBC girls volleyball team came over and said, "Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep
That's
doing it," and they
great.
kept videotaping us,
Uh,
and it was just absolutely hilarious. So
Wish I didn't miss
it's
that.
sorry.
I wish I didn't miss that because I wasn't there. I definitely wasn't there for the volleyball. I was there for part of the volleyball season, but I wasn't there for when everyone was making little birds, distracting the
Yeah,
other team.
I remember it being like last year when you were there, like you
Yeah.
were hired at the point that this happened, but I'm trying to remember if I don't think you were on shift that night.
Hmm.
No, but no, it was absolutely a lot of fun. I had fun training Ryan. That was great. I just dragged him around, told him what to do. But obviously, no way that either of us could have done any of this without our amazing team leads who literally,
Yeah.
like you were saying, like you knew what was going on. I knew what was going on because of my team leads, and I just
Yeah.
had to know if I was going on the mic or not. So, huge shout out to the team leads and huge shout out to our manager, Austin. Absolutely amazing, super fun, super chill. I can't wait to like literally go back to that. I'm super excited.
Oh man, what a fun job. Now, we have a little bit more time left, so why don't we talk about one last thing, and that's how you are an international student. So you lived in Sudbury, but not for your entire life. You've
Yeah.
been moving around a lot. Why don't you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that experience?
My life is just full of stories, Ryan, as you keep asking me this on the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of from Sudbury. That's where I graduated high school, but that's not where I've lived my whole life. I have lived the longest in Sudbury. I was there from 1 till I was 8, and then I moved to the GTA for non-Ontario people. That's the Greater Toronto area. So I lived there for a couple years, and then I moved to Jakarta, Indonesia for 5 years, and then hopped back over to Sudbury before coming out to Vancouver.
Hmm. Yeah. So what was that like for you, just living in a different country with a very different culture as well?
It was very uplifting.
Hmm.
That's the word I want to use. It was really interesting to learn so much about. So I didn't go to a public school there because it was in a completely different
Yeah.
language. I went to an American international school, specifically Jakarta Intercultural School, so JIS. Um, and it was really cool and interesting to learn about different cultures
Hmm.
and different traditions from all around the world. There was over 100, I can't remember, maybe over 150 countries represented at that school, and it was so fun to get to know everyone and to learn from where they all came from. And I think for me, I moved there when I was in grade 6 and I left in grade 10. Like I know I didn't grow up there. I
Yeah.
don't consider myself from Indonesia, but
Yeah.
that's how I developed my personality and who I am as a person. Like grade 6 to grade 10 are like pretty impactful years. Like that's 11 to 16.
Yeah.
So I really learned who I was as a person over there. I think the reason why I have a decent understanding of how the world works and society and cultures and all of that. I'm not an expert, I don't claim to be, but all of that experience living over there really opened me up to so many experiences that I wouldn't have gotten if I continued to live in Canada. Um, and as much as I love Canada and I wore like the maple leaf flag like on my
Hmm.
backpack, like you have to because Canada's just the best. But I will forever be grateful for that opportunity of getting to go live over there.
Yeah.
And I even had like culture shock coming back to Canada after living over there for so long.
Mhm. Yeah, it is really cool how being surrounded by different cultures can really impact your life and change your understanding on the world. I mean, I've always lived in Canada, but I grew up in Richmond, where the population is mostly Asian, and Middle Eastern, and smaller population of Caucasians here. But it was really cool going to high school and being able to learn about a lot of my friends' cultures, from either Hong Kong, from China, from Taiwan. I discovered a lot of the foods that I love. I discovered Taiwanese food. I love Taiwanese chicken nuggets. They're delicious. I discovered bubble tea in high school. I didn't know what bubble tea was until high school. I was picky and refused to drink bubble tea for the first few years of high school till I finally gave in. And it is my favorite drink by far. I really don't drink pop anymore, because now I just drink bubble tea because it's so much better, and it's way better for my stomach because the carbonation hurts my tummy. And it's just so cool also being able to see how everyone has grown up, what their families are like, and just being able to understand more about how different people have grown up, how different cultures are, and it's been really awesome. I think it has honestly helped me um, kind of become more of, how do I say this? It's helped me to yearn more to learn about other people's cultures. It's made me want to go out into the world and explore people's cultures I don't even know about that much, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
No, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's something that my parents kind of like ingrained in me and my sister is we're here, we're going to learn as much as we can. We're going to travel
Yeah.
and see as much as we could. I was very lucky. I got to travel a lot when we were over there. And like I went to China, I went to Thailand, I went to Singapore, Malaysia, like I can go on. I
Hmm.
even got to go to Australia and New Zealand a couple
Oh, I love New
times.
Zealand.
It's, oh,
Beautiful there.
it's
And they
beautiful.
have 0 cases of coronavirus right now.
Yeah.
They can open up. It's sick.
Yeah. Not that we can easily go there now, but
No, of
yeah, no,
course, because they're
like
border, but yeah.
I think that was just something that I didn't realize. Like, obviously, it was in grade 6. I had
Hmm.
horrible geography and didn't know where anything was in the world. Um, but I think that just was such like an eye opener for me learning about the world and like how it worked and getting to learn all those amazing cultures and traditions from people. Like, my friend group was like from everywhere. I had a couple friends from India, obviously some friends from Indonesia. I had some American friends. I had some Korean friends who I would hang out all the time. Some people from Europe as well. Like
Hmm.
your friend groups, like this mass like majority of people, and it just like kind of got normal to me. Of oh yeah, I went to Bali this weekend
Hmm.
because we had a long weekend and it was like easy. Like there's some things that we did over there that if I even tried to bring up to like my Canadian friends when I moved back home, that they were like, that's like so lavish. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, that's just like life over there.
Yeah.
So, and like I mentioned before, I had like major culture shock coming back because not only was I not going to the Toronto area or Vancouver, which have a bit more of the higher population or a bit more diverse, I was going to good old small town Sudbury. And I love some of the people with my heart, but a lot
Hmm.
of people they weren't as open to where I was from or
Yeah.
understanding the life I had lived, which is what I think I had that big culture shock. When you got to know someone at an international school, hey, where are you from? Where did you just move from? Because, like, oh, I'm American, but I just moved from Argentina. Like, that was one of my best friends. So that was like the thing I got used to asking people to start a conversation. Get to Sudbury. Oh, like, have you lived here your whole life? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're from here? Yep. Okay. Like, I just did not know how to socialize as well over there in Sudbury than I did in Jakarta. Like, it was so weird. And I think because of my experiences in Indonesia, that like almost inspired me or pushed me to go to UBC. I first learned about UBC in grade 8. I once upon a time wanted to do astronomy, and UBC had like some of
Heyo.
the best facilities for that. Um, really bad at physics, so did not go into that. But then I learned about how good the engineering program was, and that was something I was really interested in. So I started looking at UBC, and a lot of people. So a lot of people go to the U.S. if you're from international schools, but the three big universities that you go to in Canada from international school is McGill, U
Yep.
of T, and
And
UBC.
UBC. Always the
And
big three.
it's always the big three. So when I was looking at universities, I like started looking back at UBC because of their international population. And a lot of my friends that I used to go to school with in Jakarta go to UBC. I saw them for the first time in 2 or 3 years. I think I saw one girl for the first time in 7 years because I arrived at just in grade 7
Mm-hmm.
and in grade 6, and then she moved at the end of grade 6 back to Vancouver. And I ran into her at the beginning of like first year homecoming when I was working it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 7 years. Like, this is just crazy. So I didn't pick UBC just because of the people who were going there from my old school in Jakarta, but I specifically looked at UBC because it had that international touch. I felt so at home when I was at JIS, and that was something I really missed when I was in Sudbury, and that was something that I really valued was continuing to learn about different people's cultures and backgrounds, still having that international connection. And UBC had that ticked all the boxes for me, along with being one of the best universities in Canada for
Mm-hmm.
especially for engineering. So and here we are at UBC.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be going well up until now,
As
but
well as it could. Not
yeah,
UBC's fault. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
of
I'm
course.
happy you came to UBC. Otherwise, I would not have met you on the promotional team or
It's
even
very
as an
true.
RA. So that's awesome. I think now is a good time, though, where we have to sign off. It's getting to that hour mark. But before we go, is there anything you'd like to share, whether it's social media, if you want people to follow you on anything? I've been offering this to a lot of people if they want to share things that they can follow people on, or if you just rather just have the conversation.
I'm happy just to leave my voice on the air,
Yeah,
have
that's fine.
let people sink it in. If people really want to follow me, you can go through Ryan and then maybe try and find me on social media.
Yeah. No, well, that's awesome. Megan, thank you again for coming on the podcast. Hopefully, if people like this enough, I can get you back on and we can have some more conversations.
I would
If,
absolutely love that. If people want to have me back, I'd love to come back to the podcast. Thank
yeah,
you for having me.
we just need to make sure it's not just my mom and dad listening to the podcast and we get some more audience and maybe we can.
No, it's
Awesome.
all
Well,
good. My parents will start listening to it too.
yes, there we go. 2 sets of parents. We're on our way. There we go. Well, once again, Megan, thank you for coming on. I hope you have a good rest of your day and hopefully Corona works well for you in the end. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Same to you. Thank you for having me and
See ya.
this lovely conversation.